Please.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session of the book club. And of course, good evening to all those in India and nearabouts. And good morning to people like Virginia and anyone else who are in different time zones.
Veena is also there.
Huh?
I think Veena is there.
Veena is there. Okay, hi Veena. Veena is in San Francisco. So today we have this lovely book, The Hobbit, presented by this lovely person, Snoba. So Snoba Satarawala is head of the Department of English at St. Mira's College, where I used to be. And I think she's the best thing that ever happened to St. Mira's. I have only superlatives for her. Now she's shaking her head mightily, but I will say this, Snoba.
She's agreeing to it more. She's
superlatives for her. And I am very eager to hear what she has to say about The Hobbit. Now, when I was 16 years old, I read The Lord of the Rings that long ago, and I was blown away. And of course, it went on to, it had already become a cult thing. And the movies came so many years later. But this is today we have The Hobbit. So over to you, Snoba.
Okay, shall we have everyone to shut the thing, to mute themselves?
We can all switch off our audios for sure, and videos. Yes.
Right. So I must always, let me just get my slideshow going. So I must do the right thing, which is I must, first of all, I say this every time, and Mohini will identify with me, and Suhail also, that, how fiercely we believe in stories and literature, and how desperately we fight for the dignity that is due to these remarkable creations that give us purpose, give us hope, give us direction. There is this wonderful line from, I'm going to read it to you if I can manage it. Yet, I start doing these things and I do garbars then. I want to read this line for you from Dead Poets Society, and it's on my desktop. And it says, the line says that medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. And unfortunately, people forget that, and we constantly feel the need to defend and justify the arts. And I think if one good thing has come out of COVID is the return to the arts. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. So having said that, I am going somewhere with this. I'm deeply grateful to all of you who come here every Sunday and share this feeling with all of us, how precious this is. So let's begin with the novel. I can't tell you how joyful it has been to teach it. It's called The Hobbit, or There and Back Again. And I put in a picture of JRR Tolkien's, though many people would say we shouldn't do that. We should look at only the text. Just to give you a little bit of information and bore you with some Gyani stuff that I find very interesting. So Tolkien was born in South Africa, and he lost his parents very young. He was brought up by his aunt, and then of course, a priest who had a huge influence on him in his life. And there's a lot of Catholicism in his writing. But what fascinates me, first of all, is his remarkable creation of a new language. Now, I feel a need to say this because, again, I'm defending my subject. I was taking an interview, and I asked the girl, so, do animals use language? And this girl gave me this misty-eyed look. And she says, I feel that we are not on the same wavelength as animals. And therefore, although they speak to each other, we can't hear it. So they do have a language of their own. And I was like, good Lord, girl, what are you saying? So language is about grammar. It's about pronunciation. It's about phonology. It's about words that have meanings. It's something that's shared by a community. What's so remarkable about language is that it has literal meaning, but it has, you know, symbolic, metaphorical meaning. I mean, language is crazy. You know, you can, you know, intangible things like ideas, concrete things to represent intangible things, roses as girls and love, animals. And I love my dogs. I really do. Although one is right now rolled in mud and filth and come home. But I assure you, they communicate, but they do not use language, which is a very human, structured system. And what is the part of language? Language can do many things. Language is not innocent. Language creates reality. Language creates nations. And this always fascinates me that, you know, and you must realize this is the backdrop from where Tolkien is writing. So after World War II, you know, you have the creation of Israel. And how do they create the nation? How do they bring all these diverse people together from different parts of the world? There are Jews from Russia, there are Jews from India, there are Jews from, and all of them coming with their own different mother tongues. And they do the exact reverse. They erase a mother tongue and they replace it with a resurrected dead language that creates a nation. You know, so really, language is something very powerful. Those of you who read Harry Potter, if you don't say it right, the spell doesn't work. And that's what language does, it casts spells. So philology is this branch, you know, of knowledge where you study this structure and history and development and the science of language. And that's what Tolkien's was. He was a philologist from Oxford. And he takes all of that and he invents this crazy, wonderful language called Elvish. It's an invented language. It's an artificial language. Is it a language? No, because although there are some big fans who talk to each other in Elvish, it's not a language shared by a community. Although it has got cult status now. I'm also thinking of the college that I come from, St. Mira's, where the Sindhis are losing their language because they're such a scattered community and how important this is. So he got his degree in language in 1915. And look at how his life is turned upside down. You know, a scholarly guy studying at Oxford, sent off, you know, to fight in a bloody war, you know. And you must understand again, you know, people went into the First War thinking that hum yu jayega, hum yu aayega. This is the war to end all wars. This is the wonderful saving of the world kind of thing. And it didn't really work out that well now, did it? He comes back in 1916, marries his girlfriend, and after the war, becomes an English professor. And there's this wonderful group. I love their name. They're called the Inklings. You know, they had an inkling, but they're using ink. And they're just, you know, they're writing like Inklings because a lot of them wrote children's literature. And C.S. Lewis was with him and wrote Chronicles of Narnia, which is also so great, such a great fantasy work as well. I'm not going to play this for you. I play it for my students, but this, how the creativity of this man who creates this language, creates songs in this language, puts it to music, you know, making so real, you know, this world of Middle Earth, you know, and where did it come from? You know, where do stories come from? They come from so many places. Much of it came from his life and the war that he experienced. And in the telling of that war to his children, in the explaining of it to his children, how it grew, and where did it come from? It came from this simple sentence: in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And look at what that grew into. If you watch the movie, they sort of interweave one of his other stories, and this is so romantic. I have such a, but don't we all just love romance, you know, and the happily ever after, which sometimes is tragic, but it's still a happily ever after, because It's still about love, right? So there is this man, a great man called Beren, and he falls in love with the elven princess, Luthien, and she gives up immortality so that she can live her life with the mortal man that she loves. And when Tolkien's wife died, on her tombstone, he had Luthien engraved. And of course, when he died, his children wrote Beren on his grave. So yeah, this is sweet romance. Thank God for romances. So I just want to ask, since it's such a famous text that we've all grown up with, would you all like to tell me what you like about the text or the movie or anything? I'm going to do the tick one business.
I haven't read it, so I can't tell you that.
Satish, you have not read it. You're breaking my heart here. Nobody has read it?
Yes, I have. I read it for our son as a bedtime story over several days and nights, or over several nights. Beautiful.
What did you feel?
I was enchanted by the story, and our son loved it. He was very young then.
So what is it that he liked about the book?
You know, I wouldn't be able to tell you what he liked about that, about the story, but as a child, he related to it beautifully. You know, about how this little man, this ordinary, who eventually is able to challenge the horrible dragon. So,
Veena would like to say something. Veena,
yeah, I think it's a mystical, magical world. And it's such a lovely lyrical kind of a thing with the backdrop and everything else. And my children, who are twins, especially my son, loved the book and the movie. And I remember seeing the film many times over. What do you think, actually, of this cult that has come up? There's a huge club, I think, in Oxford, and there are clubs in India. I also taught at Delhi. So I had various students of mine having fan clubs. And of course, my son calls my daughter and me, who are very short, the Hobbits. Just sharing with you.
So yes, absolutely. There's this fantastic imagination. There is a wonderful use of language. And yes, Suhail, what do you love? She's a big Tolkien's fan, and we get into this Harry Potter versus Tolkien's kind of thing going on over here. So yes, Suhail.
Okay, so I get my chance now. All right. So I've always been, it was always thought things for me, and I want to pitch it again.
Suhail, you can't be heard clearly. Come closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now? All right, sorry about that. So I said I always preferred to Harry Potter. Not that Harry Potter, was great, but if it was a preference, then this was it. Like Veena said, magical, mystical, just took you away somewhere else, there's a whole world that you can go into. That was what was very important for me, like everyone else, I read it as a child. I read it as an adult. I go back to it. What is it that brings me back to it every time? It is a testimony to all those things, all those ideas that we do. Everything that was worth fighting for was worth living for. And I just want to, like the person that go back to for inspiration, stand by again. He suggests me ideal friendship. Everything. Whether it is photo, whether it is, the whole, concept of saving the world or doing, sacrifice, self-care. These are ideas which, as we grew older, we kind of saw less of. And so you go back to the book for it more and more. Right. That's what meant to me.
All right. So, yeah, you know, there's, and again, it's the language. There is this grand kind of epic language, but there's also really fun conversations which the narrator has with you. Yeah, things like, you know, that we hold on to, you know, hope worth fighting for, the little guy, you know, it's always a little guy because we're all little guys out there, right? And friendship, my goodness, friendship, what would we do without it? So these ideals. And, you know, I get very upset with people when they tell me you're an idealist. And I say, thank God, you know, thank God, because how terrible it would be if nobody felt that this world could be any better, or, you know, there was any more potential to achieve anything. So quickly, let me take you to stuffs that, you know, that this is children's literature, but it's not just children's literature. Again, like I think it was Veena who said that she used to read it to her kids. So every writer is very well aware that there is going to be an adult reading that book to the child as well. So it's very much adult literature as well as children's literature. This is your modern heroic epic. I mean, look at the themes. There's war. There's the question of, you know, great seriousness, you know, life and death, the end of the world as you know it. Another technical term is that it's a Bildungsroman. You know, it is Bilbo's journey of self-discovery, but it doesn't start with him as a little boy, but definitely you see this timid little conservative gentleman from the Shire, you know, who's turned into a warrior much against his will, you know, and the transformation from a domestic character who can't bear to be courageous and doesn't want to do anything different. In fact, he thinks it's quite, you know, one's reputation gets sullied if we do these kind of things. He's a really scary boo kind of guy. And he will go on, you know, to save the day and everybody else. It also is what we refer to as a picaresque novel, where you have individual incidents and there is like this, you know, chain, which is, I think of it as pearls on a string. So each little pearl is complete by itself, but it's connected by these people going on a journey. And what I want to say, children's literature is not innocent. Of course, there are gods and there are myths and there are, you know, supernatural heroes. But also remember, a lot of literature is controlled by kings and queens and rulers and priests. You know, what is it that people should be taught? What should they know? You know, a lot of the norms of society, the do's and don'ts, what we love, things like friendship. There are other things we need to think about. Also for little kids, how are they to understand, you know, the sky is falling on their head, they're being separated from their parents, they're being sent off to the countryside. You know, how do we explain this, you know, to children in a way that helps them cope with it? What are the various customs, taboos of our society? It reaches deeper down into what connects us as people, our collective unconscious, our shared fears, our shared hopes, or that fear of death, fear of war, fear of violence, you know, of being alone, of being separated, of the dark. These sort of repressed fears, you know, become a collective dream, and then we make stories out of them. We put in little rituals, and we connect them to seasons. So you have to think about the seasons in this novel. It starts in spring, but of course the darkest time is those of you who watch Game of Thrones, when winter is coming, and how, of course, for the West, winter is coming is a terrifying idea, you know, and the darkness and the cold and all of that. Also to help children cope with trauma of death and loss and separation and war. But the fun thing about children's literature is that there's just so much scope to it. You know, you can go crazy over here, you know, it's more dramatic, it's more fantastic. And we pretend as adults that, oh, you know, we have to be all very realistic. And that's why we love children's literature. Because you don't have to be realistic over there. You know, you can have all the madness and the humor and the nonsense language, the crazy spells, you know, appealing to your imagination. But also, if you go back, all right, you know, I said the priests and the politicians and the rulers, and of course, the Greeks and the Romans, That's where, when we study literature, the classical age, they all said kids. They're very serious about kids, you know. They're our future citizens, you know. We need to get it right over there, you know. We need to ensure that they grow up. Now, do they grow up into people we can control? Or do they grow up into people that would set this world right? These are things to think about. There's so much conflict in this novel. Of course, at the most literal level, there's political conflict. But the background is the World War, which Tolkien was part of. There's issues over boundaries and territories, and you see that, all right, in this novel. There are other things, you know, subtle things, class structures. You know, I'll refer to it later on. The trolls, the bad guys. What is the accent that they have? It's very Cockney, all right? They're the working class people that come from the mountain, the coal miners, and how they're depicted as, you know, the bad guys. What about the Shire? It's set in the West. You know, the West is where it's all safe and nice and hunky-dory, and they're civilized and they're nice, you know. But the East is where the dragon is, all right? The Lonely Mountain. You can come up with whatever you want with that. Do you think it's the colonizing Britishers going and like dragons sitting on the golden hoard of the East? Or is it that the East is full of dragons, all right, and the West is all good? You need to think about these things. Even within the little world of the hobbits, you have the Baggins, you know, the respectable people, and the Tooks, all right, who are different. How do we look at people who are different, you know? Do we feel threatened by them as a community, as a society? What about the urban versus the rural? You know, so you hope to learn to be discerning readers who read against the grain of the text. Elvish is a language also. I read a very interesting paper on conlines, and Elvish was one of them. How it is undertones of racial superiority. But having said that, you know, sometimes when we get too political, we forget about what is so beautiful and enjoyable of, you know, that's sometimes my problem with feminism as well. You know, we kind of, maybe I like to cling on to these things. So anyway, the ethics, Hobbit virtues, all right, Snyder, critic says, you know, referring to Thorin Oakenshield, the dwarf king, and when he forgives Bilbo at the end. And what does he say? He says, there is more in you of good than you know, child of the kindly West, child of the kindly West. Some courage and some wisdom, blended in good measure. Courage and wisdom is very important. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. And of course, you know, deep down, the theme of this is, of course, greed, you know, avarice. I'm going to show you, just for fun, you know, I worked for many, well, not many years. I worked for 2 years. It was super fun. I worked for Columbia TriStar. My job was to look at trailers. So I have a weakness for trailers. So this is a quick trailer of The Hobbit.
Far to the east, over ranges and rivers, lies a single solitary peak. The dwarves are determined to reclaim their homeland.
I like visitors as much as the next Hobbit. But I do like to know them before they come. Visiting.
Mr. Baggins?
At your service.
I'm surrounded by dwarves. What are they doing here?
Oh, they're quite a merry gathering.
So, this is the Hobbit.
You asked me to find the 14th member of this company, and I have chosen Mr. Baggins.
Me? No.
Hobbits can pass unseen by most if they choose, which gives us a distinct advantage.
We will seize this chance to take back Erebor!
Here, Mr. Bilbo, where are you off to?
I'm going on an adventure!
Mithrandir, why the halfling?
Why Bilbo Baggins? Perhaps it is because I'm afraid. And it gives me courage.
So this is your purpose, to enter the mountain?
What of it?
there are some who would not deem it wise.
A dark power has found a way back into the world.
Why don't we have a game of riddles?
And if it loses, what then? Well, if it loses, precious, then we eat it. If Baggins loses, we eat it whole.
Fair enough. I will take each and every one of these dwarves over the mightiest army. Loyalty, honor, a willing heart. I can ask no more than that.
Home is now behind you. The world is ahead.
Well, that could have been worse.
You've got to be joking!
All right, for those of you who haven't read or haven't seen, that was like a quick, now I love trailers because it's really so difficult. As usual, I'm going to start on my mat, clicking all over the place. Escape, that is what we want to do. We want to escape from here and we want to stop share, right? And we want to put back our, bear with me, everybody. Right, so the structure that he uses, this little technical stuff, all right, he uses a very biblical structure, which is a chiastic structure. It's a ring structure, and it's also used in epics, where you will see what begins, you see how A, B, C, D, E goes back to, and the whole thing goes back all over again, you know, this kind of structure. So I'll quickly just take you through the, oh dear. I'll take you through the, bear with me, everybody. I've done some clicking business here. Yes. All right. So let me now zoom in so you can see this bit a little better. So the novel begins with Bilbo at home, all right, and Gandalf comes. And Bilbo sort of, you know, there's a conflict within Bilbo and he's sort of tricked into this adventure, but he chooses to go. He chooses to go. And of course, the first major incident is the 3 trolls. You will see this number 3 repeated. It's a biblical number. It's an epic number. It's the Holy Trinity. All right. It's the unholy Trinity throughout this novel. And you meet the 3 trolls, these giant guys who are tricked, all right, because of their arguing, and eventually they turn to stone because, you know, dawn comes and sun turns them to stone. They're creatures that live in the darkness. And of course, they find, magic swords and all kinds of things over there. And then what happens is they go on their journey and they go saving the captured dwarves and getting treasure. And then they go to Rivendell. This is the last safe, homely house where the elves are. Now, there is a reason for this, all right, because there are magical letters on the map that, they cannot read. And it is the elven king Elrod who will read the hidden message in the map. All right. And then as they go on their journey, they meet the goblins because they're sheltering. And in this whole fight, Bilbo, the small guy, gets knocked out. And 2 things are happening simultaneously. All right. One is what the dwarves and Gandalf go through, whilst the other is what Bilbo goes through. And of course, Bilbo's story is more important because he will find that ring that will connect the story to Lord of the Rings after that. And over there, Bilbo meets his alter ego or his doppelganger, Gollum. And of course, this brings in the idea of so many things, the ego, society, versus the id or your repressed desires, your unconscious. You have this conflict that children love of good versus evil. All right, but also this very famous conflict that we talk about, which is nature versus nurture. Are you born a particular way, or are you made that way by society and circumstances? And Gollum is, you find out in the Lord of the Rings, he is also a hobbit, you know, and how he gets corrupted by this ring that is a ring of power. And of course, the ring that you wear on your ring finger connects to your heart, all right? And over here, it becomes like a noose. It kind of becomes like a handcuff. Then the journey as it goes on, all right, they manage to escape. And they are then, as they come, the other dwarves and Gandalf, they escape because Gandalf helps them. And they come out of the goblins' lair, and, you know, they're chased. And they're chased by, and they're running, and they come to this place. And, you know, when they get there, they feel something very evil there. And sure enough, all right, the wargs are coming, the wolves are coming, and they will climb up the tree to protect themselves. And the wargs and the goblins were meeting to go and attack innocent human beings. And now as the dwarves are trapped up in the tree with Gandalf, all right, to save them, Gandalf starts throwing. Again, this is so much World War I, you know, with war changing and bombing from the sky, which never happened before. If you read the epics, they all fought with swords. But now there are bombs from the sky, and Gandalf is throwing those bombs of fire, and the wood catches fire, forest catches fire. And the goblins come, and they're trying to smoke them out. And at that point, all right, it's so glorious because the eagles, you know, the king of the birds will come down and sweep down and pick them up. And then they will take them. And you will see this, you know, the rise and fall, the rise. You almost think something terrible will happen, something good happens. Almost think something terrible will happen, and they're saved by something good. And so then they go to Bjorn, and Bjorn is the skin changer. All right, this is a very eco moment in the story. I love it because Bjorn is someone who fights for the environment, and he will change from man to bear, and he will help them, and he will take them to the end, the edge or the beginning of the murky forest, Mirkwood. And they're told very much like Dorothy, all right, follow the pathway. Keep your, again, so metaphorical for children, you know, keep your focus in mind, follow the path of good, don't stray from where you're supposed to go, listen to what you're told, obey your elders, or bad things happen to you. And of course, the dwarves will go along that pathway, and they will get desperate, again, very biblical, you know, God will test your faith, God will test your faith. All right, stick to the path. And of course, they don't. Along the way, one of the dwarves will fall into that river, Lethe. All right, it's not called Lethe. Lethe is the river in Hades, where the river of forgetfulness. So you see that kind of intertextuality, where our texts all sort of connect to each other, and they're influenced by each other. And then what happens is they're caught by the spiders, and they're trapped in the spider's web. The Bilbo saves the day, him and his ring and his special sword called Sting. And they're finally captured by the wood elves. These are different from Elrond's people. And that's another thing that this novel allows. It allows for so many cultures to come into the story. And how did they escape from the wood elves? Bilbo, all right, will save the day, and they will get into these barrels, and they will go down the river, and they will finally reach the lakeland. And the myths and the stories, and how important stories are, you know, they keep hope alive. They keep memories alive. If you remember when I spoke about Persepolis, she says that it is important to forgive, but we must never forget. So these myths are storehouses of memories. And when he reaches there, the people will welcome them, and they say, the king under the mountain is come. And they will begin the last stage of their journey, which is going to the Lonely Mountain, where Smaug has come. Now, the Lonely Mountain belonged to Thorin's men, the men of Durin. You know, they endure under the mountain, and how this horrible fire-breathing dragon comes and usurps the mountain and destroys the entire landscape. Again, a metaphor for war, all right? It could be Hitler, it could be any kind of tyrant that does that. And how you have to stand up to this, even if you're a little guy. And when they come there, again, it's Bilbo's riddling abilities. He will escape Gollum through his riddles. And once again, you know, he will find out something very valuable about the dragon, which will save the day. And of course, if you read epics, you will realize, any Greek literature, you know, the greatest human flaw is hubris. It's pride. And you will see pride, a little bit of pride in Bilbo also. He's not perfect. But he tells the dragon, oh, mighty dragon, you know, oh, most glorious dragon. And you know, the dragon knows that he's being flattered. But so what, right? We all love being flattered. And the dragon will reveal his Achilles heel, which is he will stand up to show. And that's another thing, no one must think they're infallible. You know, he stands up there and he says, look at my glorious mighty armor. And he doesn't realize that he exposes right near his heart, you know, a missing spot, a chink in the armor, which Bilbo sees. Bilbo will then, and you know, Aristotle says way back 400 years before the birth of Christ, that if you say something or you put something in your plot, it has to be necessary to the action. Just don't put it in there for no reason. And you will see all of that over here, because Thorin will go on and on about this, the heart of the mountain, you know, the heart of the mountain, where the mountain are the men, and the heart of the men and the dwarves is this Arkenstone. And Bilbo, you know, takes it as his share, and it's going to play a very important role later on, because what begins with perhaps a hint of greed will then become the ultimate surrender and sacrifice. So Bilbo manages to steal from the dragon, first a golden cup and then the Arkenstone. And of course, the consequence of that, you know, plot is, a series of cause and effects. If you do something, what is the consequence? The dragon, all right, goes with rage, all right. First of all, he smashes their secret entrance. Then he goes to the lake town of Esgoroth and he sets everything on fire, all right. But again, there is this little bird, this thrush that keeps coming in the story, irritating everybody. But Thorin says, no, you know, again, this is such an ecological novel, you know. I'm thinking right now, they're saying Greta Thunberg for the Nobel Prize, and I hope she gets it because of the urgency of our situation. But he's talking about this way back then, you know. And the thrush understands the language of men, and he goes as a go-between, and he tells the bard, who is, and I love this again, this is a moment of glory for writers again, you know, who's the one who saves the day? All right, it is the bard, all right, it is the poet, it is the storyteller who will take his arrow and he will shoot the dragon right in his heart and he will destroy him. And that, of course, you know, is one of the climaxes in the story. But alas, greed. So what happens is that, I went and did my usual Gerber server. I want to stop. I want to do like this. Yes. All right. What happens is that when the dragon is killed, unfortunately, killing the dragon doesn't kill the dragon within people. So there's a dragon on the outside, but there's a dragon on the inside as well. And the spell of the dragon, which is gold, all right. And, you know, the wisdom of Tolkien's, the spell of the dragon in this novel is gold, but there is a much bigger spell, and that spell is of power, you know, and that will, you know, be taken further in Lord of the Rings. But when the men of the already, you know, word spreads that the dragon is dead, you know, and these birds, like, you know, birds of prey, they're all coming in, you know, and you have the Elven King coming down, but he rises above his greed and he helps the people who have been rendered homeless. The Elven King and the people of Dale will then together, they will unite and they will go to Thorin. And the bard tells Thorin that, hey, you know, the gold in there. First of all, he says, I'm the one who shot the dragon, so I deserve a share. Second of all, out of humanity, these people are dying. The people, it's cold, winter has come, they're starving, you know, they're so poor, you could help them. Again, this whole post-World War kind of situation of poverty and financial loss and all of that. And he says, third of all the gold in there is not yours. You know, some of it came from us. But unfortunately, you know, greed and pride, hubris, and Thorin, you know, will surrender to greed and he will not give in. And that is where Bilbo will rise to the occasion, and he will sneak out with the Arkenstone, which he had taken, and he gives it, you know, to prevent war and to prevent death and to prevent loss. And he gives it to, you know, the bard, and he gives it to the elven king that go to him and tell him, because that's what he wants the most, the heart of the mountain. And Gandalf comes, all right. And now we're getting ready for the final finale, the battle of the 5 armies, because if good is coming, evil will come as well. Thorin is called for his cousin Dane to come, but he will support the side of good, and they will fight against the goblins and the wargs, all right, and there is a terrible battle, the eagles will come, and of course, good triumphs. Thorin dies in the process, but it is a tragedy, it is epic, but it dies with his awareness and his forgiving Bilbo, and the story comes full circle where, so this is your chiastic structure, as you can see, you know, it goes full circle, and he will go home, and it's too funny, when he goes home, everybody's selling up all his stuff, and of course, eventually, you know, the dwarves will come to meet him again. So just to take you through this map at the beginning of the novel, you have here the Western lands and this Hobbiton, the Shire, where our man Bilbo lives. And this little fellow will make this journey and he will go over here. Let me do my, I love this, it's some time pass nonsense stuff that I love to do, all right? Waste a lot of people's time doing it in the process. So you can see him here from Hobbiton, he goes here and he goes to Elrond and Rivendell. From here, he will go through the mountain, all right, where the goblins are. And over here, he will get the ring. All right, here is a terrible situation, the fight that happens with the wargs and the forest being set on fire. The eagles will take him up to their eyrie or their nest. They will set them down, all right, just near the house of Bjorn, who is the bear man, skin changer, shifter. They will then go through the forest where they will go to where the spiders are. Bilbo will save them from the spiders, and they will go through where the elven king is, all right. They will then go in barrels down the river to the lake land of Esgaroth, all right. And finally, they will go to the lonely mountain where Smaug is sitting over here. Here you can see your Smaug who has destroyed everything. And this is where the final battle takes place in the Wilder Lands. This is all located over there. This is one way of looking at the structure of the novel. Another way of looking at the structure of the novel is your typical, you know, storybook mountain, all right? But, you know, this will have many peaks, this novel. Am I sharing my screen? Yes, I am. All right, so this is your typical storybook mountain where you say who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist and what are the different forms of conflict. But I'm going to skip all of that. And I'm going to take you through the different characters. Of course, there's Bilbo Baggins, who lives at Baggin Cottage. He's your unlikely hero. He's your reluctant hero. There's Gandalf the Grey. All right, Mithrandir, as he's called by the elven people. He is the Grey Wanderer. And I love this because there are shades of grey to people, you know. It's not always about black and white. Thorin Oakenshield, his grandfather was king under the mountain. you know, the lonely mountain. There were 13 dwarfs, unlucky number 13, which again is very biblical, all right, because it's Christ and his apostles. And of course, the lonely mountain, in the end, the hero's journey, finally, it's lonely because you have to save yourself and nobody will come to save you, which is what young Bilbo discovers. There's Rivendell, the last, you know, homely house, with Elrond the king. There's Gollum, and there's Smeagol, the same person, which also talks about the traumas of war. All right, it's very easy to be a nice person like Bilbo when life has been good to you. But what about people who are scarred by war and the loss that goes with it? Of course, Smaug is your evil, conquering tyrant. And of course, there's a necromancer who's very much in the background, all right, who is the Dark Lord Sauron, who created the ring in Lord of the Rings. There are these multiple races, you know, which is also very wonderful. You must realize that England was still the empire, all right, at that time. You know, a little delusional also about itself, you know. So you have these different sort of, you know, races, and of course, the final battle of the 5 armies. So this journey, this is, you know, your epic journey, you know, this going on a quest to find a treasure, the dragon sitting on it, but it's as much the outer journey is an inner journey as well. It's a journey of heroism and courage. There are issues of property and community, whether you see the happy world of the Shire and Rivendell, you know, you have the lake town, and then you have desolation and destruction, and you have the, you know, the world of the goblins and the land of the goblins and the land of the Elven King. Greed. Smaug and Gollum both take things that are not theirs. All right, Smaug will take the gold that is not his, and Gollum takes a ring that is not his, and the terrible consequence of doing that. You say good versus evil, Eros versus Thanatos, life versus death, love versus hate, you know, power. And the important thing is the true wielder of power is not seen. And that is so important, because think about it, you know, the real sources of power, you know, are always shadowy and in the background. The art of storytelling, so important. I love the narrator. He's constantly, you know, telling you, hey, you probably didn't know this. And oh my God, you know, chill, don't panic. It's going to work out okay later on. The importance of loyalty versus betrayal. And you know what I love also is that, you know, Suhail is there in my department. And, you know, every time I goof up or every time I do something wrong, all right, I'll tell her, you took my thing, it's your fault, all right. And I felt so much better after reading this novel, because it's very human. That's what we all do. You know, when there's a problem and things initially are falling apart, we're also blaming each other, all right? And then, you know, after we go through that, you know, then we can sort of rise beyond it. So you see this. Everybody's guilty of betrayal. We're not perfect people, and it's all right, you know, as long as you fix your mistake in what you did. So much appearance versus deception in this story as well. The ring that seems to be something that protects him. Later on, you realize it's something that's harming him. The idea of legitimacy versus usurping something. You know, Thorin feels that it is his legitimate right to be king under the mountain, just like Gollum feels. It is his legitimate right to take the ring, which is his precious. And how this whole story is told to you. At the end, of course, Dane becomes king under the mountain. The bard will rebuild Dale, which is the home of his ancestors. And Bilbo will return to Bag End to find out he's been declared dead and everybody's trying to take his possessions. So this is this typical pattern, you know, you know, what is that fellow's name, I tell you? Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. And Joseph Campbell did an experiment where he had these little chicks that had just been newborn. And he got this wooden hawk to come towards the chicks. And these chicks ran away helter-skelter, only when the wooden hawk came towards them. When the hawk went away, chicks were fine. When a wooden dove came towards them, chicks were fine. All right, it's the wooden hawk. And he says, we need to find out, what are the wooden hawks in literature that make people respond to things instinctually? And he puts down this pattern that he says that is a hero's journey. And typically you have a call to adventure, like Gandalf will tell Bilbo, all right, there will be magical things that will help him, all right. Along the way, there will be various sort of doorways and thresholds, and there will be people will help him through. So for example, one major threshold is Rivendell, and Elrond will read the runes, the ancient language in the moonlight, all right. There will be a mentor, somebody to help you along the way. Gandalf is their mentor, but the mentor has to leave you at some point. At your lowest point, you will have a revelation, death and rebirth. And of course, little Bilbo, it is that Arkenstone where he realizes you can't eat the stone. It's people, it's human beings, it's life. That's important. That results in a transformation. And you will see this tiny little hobbit become really remarkable, because not only does he give the stone to the elven king and the bard, he doesn't desert the dwarves. With great risk to his own life, he goes back to them to honestly tell them, yes, I took the Arkenstone and it was my share and my right. And he will face the wrath of Thorin. Of course, there is a sense of regret or whatever. And then they return back home. And this is the pattern that the novel follows. So yes, I've got 5 minutes to spare. And that's why at the beginning, I ask people, what do you want to say? Because I speak too much. So, so yes, I think I'm going to say what we took away in the class was, first of all, like you said, the novel empowers you, as little people, and we're all little people. The novel allows you to be human and make mistakes. When we recognize the mistakes that the characters make and we forgive them, we're able to forgive ourselves. We're able to forgive other people. We recognize in the silliness of the character our own silliness. Which is something that is enlightening. Also, it is something that, it allows you to be kind to yourself, to laugh at yourself a bit. Yeah. So yes, go ahead, everybody.
Okay, guys, unmute yourself, start your video. Let's see everyone around. Okay, Mohini, take over.
So, Snowball, that was lovely. I am absolutely in awe of Tolkien's creative imagination. I mean, he has created this entire world, peopled it with so many kinds of beings, all these adventures and, the conflicts and the drama of the whole thing. It's huge. It's so huge. What the size of the canvas is absolutely awesome. Awesome, the word used in the proper sense. So I was wondering, have you ever come across a reader who hasn't appreciated all that and has in fact been annoyed with all this fantasy being unreal and what the heck?
Yeah, I had a neighbor who said, what is this stupid book that was prescribed? And I felt so offended, I can't. Yeah, then I even asked myself at one point, is there something wrong with me? Am I like a little immature where, I just don't want to face reality and I want to sort of surrender? And then I thought about it and I said, oh, thank God we can escape to this place you know. And I think what is remarkable is that the escape also is coming with a kind of realization that there is no escape. You know, it's all very real in its fantasy. We can connect it to any of the things that happen around us. Yeah.
Right, right. And another, before I open it to everybody else.
Indu wants to ask a question.
Yes. So Tolkien, of course, wrote this a long time ago, but in recent years, there has been this deluge of fantasy, you know. I mean, whether it's Harry Potter or the Twilight series or whatever, how do you explain this? What's happened?
So maybe somebody else out there would like to say something about that. I have a lot to say about it. But
why don't you say some of it?
Well, you know, there's, you know, anime, you know, this whole crazy, absolute, my son, I wanted to slap him this morning. He made me see this horrible thing from this anime thing called the Titans, you know, and another Freudian moment that the Titan holds the mother and eats the mother. So I'm like, son, you know what are you trying to say to me over here? But so yeah, for me, why do I like fantasy? And I do. We have a lot of it at Miras. You know, so Will teaches, and I love it. You know, his Dark Materials is you know, Northern Lights, and it's a trilogy by Philip Pullman. Brilliant. You know, then of course there is there's, you know, some of the anime ones are really lovely. There's one called Spirited Away. It's a lovely anime movie. You should watch it. It's kind of, you know, got an Alice in Wonderland kind of feel. So I think fantasy has been around since, you know, we're talking about since the myths. You know, since we're talking about Kronos, you know, eating his children, the gory stuff, you know, then Zeus coming along and conning Kronos and making him swallow a stone and vomit out his brothers and sisters. And with that rock going flying, you've got, you know, it becoming a source for the oracles. And, you know, then we've got the Cyclops and we've got, so, you know, it's always been around. So maybe, you know, Freud says that things that bother us or things we're ashamed of or things we're frightened of or things that society has made us feel that we need to hide, we kind of push down into our unconscious. And there's this ego, which is society, like a watchman. And the example that I give is this really cheesy example from this really bad Hindi movie that I always forget. But I remember the names of the actors. There's Ritesh Deshmukh. And Ritesh Deshmukh goes to one girls' hostel and he's not allowed into the girls' hostel. All right. So what he does is he puts some oranges in like boobies. All right. And there's this ridiculous overacting. All right. And in this disguised manner, he's allowed into the hostel, the girls' hostel. All right. So just like that, you know, we sort of have this stuff repressed in us. But if you put oranges and you come out in this disguised manner, the ego says, the watchman, the ego says, all right, you can come in, all right. So that's what it is. It's stuff that's down there, but it comes out in this displaced manner, in this disguised manner, you know. So evil comes like dragons and fairies and all of that stuff. And it allows us to address things that bother or frighten us, but in a way that's acceptable, or in a way that distances us from the harsh reality. So I think that's why we like fantasy so much. And also there's so much potential, right? You can do whatever you want with it.
Snowball, Indu is waiting to say something.
Ask a question, yes.
Enjoyed the whole presentation.
Indu, I can't hear you clearly.
The presentation was very enjoyable because the child in every human being reacts.
Anil, can you increase the volume?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the child in you responds to all the events and the signs of courage, of love, of challenges. And that's how your Bilbao's character is enchanting. And I've only seen the movie, but I've always been entranced by his journey and the way he responds and the challenges that he faces and the courage which he has and how he takes it all. And when it comes to making a choice, he does it with such charm. His character is very charming, and he may appear to be very like a bit shabby and whatever, but he's extremely lovable. What Tolkien has done in him is to put a lot of dichotomies together, and through him has projected, and that's how the whole story is absolutely fascinating, because it has layers of interpretation which you brought out, the war, and like each one wants to look at the novel through so many prisms to see what he would like to see. But the base concept of love and of loyalty and of forgiveness, these are all the classic virtues which are brought out very well by Tolkien. And the children catch it very quickly when you're reading. They are able to relate to their own little fights and their class and their jealousies. And that's what is something very remarkable. Thank you.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned this, but you know, what is so important is that what magnifies his courage is how frightened he is. You know, and that's the important thing for every, you know, little kids to know that it's okay to be frightened. We're all frightened, you know, and that's what makes you courageous. If you weren't frightened, it wouldn't, you're not being courageous, right? So yeah, I love it.
I think Veena is there. Veena, would you like to say something? Veena, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm just unmuting. As I said, there's lots of magical realism which has been brought out. But I think Snowball's done a great job in actually deconstructing Tolkien, because I think it's very difficult to put it all together and have something which makes sense to both children and to adults. I think Lord of the Rings was a novel for both young children to enjoy and older people to really, you know, almost take in at a sensory level. This is what I think magical realism is, something you can look at it from the inside out, so to speak. So I think that's what's fascinating. And I think your presentation was lovely. Thank you. The structure and development of language is what is fascinating. I never looked at it from that point of view.
There's a whole biblical parallel, which I didn't even get into. So if you think of it like, you know, Eden and the Shire, and of course, then there is the serpent, the dragon is referred to as the worm, and the serpent and temptation. And of course, there is the, and therefore the lapse and the fires of hell. And of course, the resurrection at the end where he comes back to his village, you know, you can look at it like that as well. But my husband says literature people go to...
Huh? Sorry, you didn't get that?
My husband says we literature people go too far. He says, you didn't mean that, but you all will bring that meaning to it. I say, what does it matter? The more the merrier, it's so much fun.
Are there any Latin American authors that you found equally fascinating as you find Tolkien?
Yeah, of course. And there's the essential Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
I was thinking, yeah, that.
There is this woman who, I've forgotten her name right now, but she...
Vargos?
But, you know, so there's a, yeah, that's their culture. The South Americans, they use a lot of this magical realism. Yeah.
Thanks. It was really wonderful.
I will send you the name of that author. Go look at my books and I will send it to Mohini and she can send it to you.
Great. Thanks.
I think Mohini will put it up on the WhatsApp group.
Club group, yes.
Yeah, club group. Sunita, you have been quiet.
Been quiet because I've enjoyed this so much. As always, Snowbird, it was so fabulous. Every time I attend one of your sessions, I feel I just want to come and sit in your class. How much fun that would be. But I was introduced to The Hobbit. I want to tell you, when my Veer, my younger one, was in his 11th and 12th, he was in an international school, and they introduced The Hobbit, and I didn't know anything about, I mean, I knew it was all about this, you know, fantasy thing, and I was rolling my eyes and saying, what is this? And they're not teaching Shakespeare, and for literature, they're making them do this fantasy nonsense. And my Veer is not a reader at all. I mean, his life has gone through with YouTube. I mean, YouTube has taught him everything. I have taught him nothing. Parenting also came from YouTube for me. But he just took to The Hobbit like, I can't tell you. And it was because of his interest in the book that, I mean, I still after so many years remember Bilbo Baggins and, you know, and the dragon and Gandalf and all those characters. And as this is coming back, I'm just thinking that I want to reread it because in all the work that I'm doing with corporate right now, there is so much that we can relate to what they're talking about in terms of mentorship and, you know, your journey that you're going through, finding your purpose. And so I'm going to reread this book, Snowba, thanks to you.
Absolutely. And the fellowship, you know, that whatever it is, you know, you have your individual sort of, but we have to be professional and we have to work towards this, you know, as a team. And you must think of soldiers in the army, you know, it's a life and death situation, you know, that you put aside your personal differences and ultimately you rise above your pettiness. And, you know, we as human beings, it's fine. We are silly and petty sometimes, you know. And we are great and glorious as well. So, yeah.
Ginny, you have been quiet quite some time. How are you?
I have not read the book, but I think I will read it now. Thank you so much.
Okay, Mo, I think you can take over.
Okay.
Kaveri is there hiding away. Kaveri, would you have anything to say?
I was just fascinated because there were so many layers of meaning that Snowba brought out, which I would never have thought of. As I said, I had read this as a bedtime story to my son over many nights, and he loved it as he was a very little child then. And but there's so many layers of meaning that Snowba has referred to. I always thought of Bilbo as a vulnerable sort of anti-hero kind of person who finds his strength and his abilities when he goes out of his comfort zone. An ordinary person who does extraordinary things. And that's one of the things that I thought was very beautiful about this particular story. And I also thought that the fact that he was not actually eventually the dragon slayer, somebody else became the dragon slayer. So his destiny took him through quite a tortuous path to, you know, and he is really the hero of the story, but he was not the dragon slayer. Somebody else slayed the dragon. I found it a really beautiful story, but I have to say Snowba has brought in so many different aspects, including the structure of the novel and other issues that I would never, ever have even imagined. This is marvelous. Thank you so much, Snowba.
You know, you brought out something very important, which is the truth for all of us, is that change is the hardest thing in the world. The truth is none of us want to change. You know, it's frightening. We don't want to rock our boat. We really all are like Bilbo. We want to be safe and comfortable. We want to eat our food. We want to sleep. But, well, A, we don't have a choice. And B, that won't make us into heroes now, would it? You know, so yeah, you gotta, and maybe he wasn't the dragon slayer. He was a harbinger of peace. And that is what is more important, to be the peacemaker and the harbinger of peace. And I think that is so important for someone like Tolkien who's been through war, So yes,
that's what I like very much. A typical fairy tale would be that, the hero goes and slays the dragon. But in this one, that is not what happened.
And the hero.
Beautifully done.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Kaveri. So I think we all agree.
I think Farooq wanted to say something.
Okay, yes, Farooq.
No, so I wanted to just tell you that Satish and me were chatting and we both decided that we'll read Hobbit and this author properly. We are both engineers, and as you told in the beginning of your lecture, that engineers, lawyers all remain away from fantasy. But still, Satish is very stoic about it, but I'll convince him to read it and hopefully enjoy it. And I promise you that, like Virginia said that she will read it, I will read it. We'll see the movie also. So thanks, Snobo, for that, and huge Parsi enthusiasm in your presentation. And what I wanted to tell you was that, at the time when we were in school, we never had PPT presentation and this type of diagrammatically talking how a story is built up. I found that very interesting, Is this the way teachers teach nowadays? It's wonderful.
I know. I would love to be a student again. I agree with you.
I mean, this is amazing. I mean, I just imagine how Uzma must have felt when she was in your class. Amazing.
Uzma was great, and they did really great things in my class, and it was them, it was not me, it was them. The play they put up, which they and practiced one whole day at Gyan Adab, I will never forget that.
Oh, Farooq, what do you think? I've told all the things about literature and all that. I have a lecturer, a professor right down there in my house. So I'm told about it all the time.
They love her. My MA girls are crazy about her. She's my teacher. Mohini is a great teacher, everybody. Really.
Thank you, Snowball. But I'm old school. Like, I'm learning how to do these PPTs and whatnot, and I do them somewhat. But I was looking at yours and thinking, hey, how do you do that? It's a learning process.
Tushar can help you. So Tushar can make the pictures for you.
This was a really bad PPT. You must see what my students do. It's amazing. These young technology. They just do it so easily. And one student once told me, she says, ma'am, you're taking so long to start. I'm falling asleep over here. I'm like, oh my God. I'm looking, and all my lectures begin with me looking at the screen like that,
Yes. Indeed. There are times when I say, well, I don't know if I can do such and such. And someone pipes up and says, yes, you can. At the bottom, such and such, that's what you do. And there you are. Yeah. You're very smart. Right.
Just before you, Mohini, I think some people want to join the book club, and it will be a good idea if they can put the numbers down in the chat so that quickly I can type numbers and put them in the book club,
One person, one lady, Veena, what's your surname? Give me a surname and email ID, makes life easy for me.
Yeah, it's Ravi Kumar.
Yeah.
And the email is ravikumar.veena, V-E-E-N-A.
Why don't you type it out, please? Type it out.
Yeah, sure. I put it in the chat, my number.
Yeah,
I
put my number in the chat.
I got your number, and I'll give you a call, and you can give it back, come back to me and tell me that, whatever.
Okay. May I just ask?
That's my number. That's my number. I told her to send a hi to me.
Okay, but she sent it to me.
Okay.
9818.
Very wise. Identity crisis ho sakta hai na?
Okay. Okay.
May I just ask one quick question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Snover, are you by any chance related to Shakufe Satarawala?
Yes, she's my sister-in-law.
Oh my God! All right.
So
she won't remember me, but she was in Miranda House when we were there.
I will tell her that someone from Miranda House.
Yeah, we were Krishna Kaveri twins, but I don't think she'll remember us. We were science students.
Hey, there's a Kaveri here.
I've written the name down and I will tell her, yes.
Yeah, we were in the science thing, so we hardly ever interacted, but we were in the hostel together. I remember Shakufe very well. Okay.
It's the name.
Veena, what's your name?
Satish, now I think you should talk to her. She's given her number.
Okay,
so
I do.
I think we need
My mother has come in. Hello, mommy.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice that your mom's there as well. Okay, so we're winding up now. Thank you, Snober, for an excellent presentation. I knew it would be excellent. It was. And thank you everyone who joined us today, who asked questions, made observations, or listened quietly, whichever. So thanks a lot. Let me just let you know that next Sunday, we have Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible, presented by Suhail Azevedo. On the 17th of October, we have a heavy literary piece, The Divine Comedy by Dante, none less. And the presenter is Manju Jedka. If you remember, she had made the presentation on Sylvia Plath, which was very popular. And on the 24th of October, we have All the Light We Cannot See, Anthony Doerr. Now, Anthony Doerr's new novel has just come out, Cloud Cuckoo Land, and I had put it up on the group. It is being praised. So I wondered if anyone might want to take that novel up to present to the book club. Right, so thank you very much. Farooq, would you like to have the last word?
No, nothing. I just want to thank Snober and everybody. And the programs from Gyanadam side, I will announce next week. There are some 2-3 programs. Yesterday, we had a very good program from Robert D'Souza. I just want to tell everybody that each and every of our book club programs are there on Facebook Live. The link will be put on the book club and all our other groups immediately after the program. And by Monday, now we have started putting the book club on the YouTube also. So you can go on YouTube and see book club. You can see it on the Facebook. You can see it from our website. So all the things our backend team is doing properly now. And of course, we edit all the starting and ending part, you know.
Okay.
So that's from my side.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. See you next Sunday.
Thank you. Bye. I will see you next Sunday and the Sunday after that. Divine Comedy. Wow.
Yes, exactly. Quite
so much. And it's very difficult to do this in this short time.
I know. So I'm eagerly waiting to see how she handles it.
Shall we end beyond?
Yes, please. Thank you, everyone. All the best.